We're here right now at the Executive Inn and Suites. It's in Oakland, California. A survivorship conference for ritual abuse survivors and survivors of extreme child abuse. Also professionals that are here to learn how to treat survivors.
It's a special conference to bring the movement back to flourish.
The beauty of a newsletter is that you ask your people to take it to contribute. We started getting this rich amount of material. 5 states now it's 7 states, now it's every state in Canada, and then it's Europe. And
gives people a place to express themselves, meet each other. Online message boards where people can talk from different ages that they've experienced stuff.
It's abuse that's targeted towards breaking the will of the victim.
Ritual is when you kind of have the same thing happen over and over. Every birthday you celebrate in this way, or every holiday you do this way.
In the same way that there are rituals that are good, such as a marriage ceremony, ritual abuse is that same type of ceremony done in an abusive situation.
You know, repeated at the same time, every day, every weekend.
Satanic ritual abuse is like the worship of Satan, specifically on Christian holidays and many other holidays.
They usually present in therapy as victims. If you work with them long enough, you will discover that they have been put in positions to feel like perpetrators.
Not only do they tell you that you're evil, you feel evil. When you believe that about yourself, you really need a lot of outside support.
You could take regular abuse and then just multiply it times 20 or 50. It takes one person abusing one person, and then you're in a room with 20 men that are going to abuse you.
She survived horrific abuse, so she's strong.
And we're not victims, we're survivors. And some of the strongest people you'll ever meet.
And she takes advantage of every scrap of luck that came her way.
My main abuser was my dentist. And I believe at this point that he was head of a ring of men who ran a child prostitution ring. There was a lot of torture that went on.
I grew up in ritual abuse cult. It was Masonic based. I believe there were also some government pieces to it I discovered later.
My family, both sets of grandparents and my parents were all involved in satanic ritual abuse and Masonic abuse. I was really extremely abused for 29 years.
She was being trained to be what the cult called the queen. She wasn't just satanic ritual abuse, she was government abuse, the mafia.
A lot of it was in a church environment, Presbyterian church, and super out there, snake handling type churches.
There were some pretty heavy rituals. Being forced to, as a small child, to kill, having people over there. If you didn't do it, you know, you'd be killed. Those are probably the worst things, other than some of the severe tortures.
Being forced to kill, looking at things that are being killed. There's sexual abuse, physical abuse.
That's the conditioning that we were put under. Why did you do that? What's your justification?
The things that ritual abuse survivors have endured are probably some of the hardest things anyone has ever endured.
They would do things to sort of snap your mind so that they could control you.
Do what they told you.
Abusive animals, you couldn't even cope with what was happening.
Trying to break the spirit of people.
There might be candles, there might be figures, there might be masks, and they were definitely pedophile, torturing, raping children.
The reason why people resist believing is because it goes outside the norm of their experience. Some people are in denial. They don't have any parameters for dealing with it.
This idea of this false American dream, white picket fence, to the house, the 2.5 kids, or there's this very idealized, you know, someone said the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist.
It wasn't where I had doubts. I knew my wife enough to know this is something she wouldn't just make up. My life has been threatened several times by them. That's how I know it's real.
Being in a room full of people that not only didn't question the reality that I was coming up with, but really understood it and can speak the same language and understand the experiences, it was like normalized in terms of having that experience and feeling that alienated and that confused, thinking you're making it up or you're crazy or you're alone or you're the only one. It was just an experience that I can't even describe.
It's a hard question to know what it was like thousands of years ago, but I think there's always been forms of abuse, you know, getting people to dissociate through rituals. I mean, sacrifice goes way back. Now it's underground, but in the past it was above ground.
It was about a deep healing, a deep wound that is part of humanity that needs to heal. The people doing this are really ill. There's something really seriously wrong.
Anybody who knows anything about the history of those, first you never heard of it, then people have started to heard about it, then people really got involved in it, and then the backlash hit.
Then there was a huge backlash. People were threatened, sued.
The political backlash, a lot of which was motivated by perpetrators and a lot of which was motivated by just denial.
We had this big moment of freedom 20, 30 years ago where everything was coming out. Accused and convicted pedophiles, those people all got together in false memory types groups and started labeling it things like moral panic.
Now we're really, I think, it's much more to a working reality day to day.
The websites have been getting more attention, larger websites, the groups are spreading out more, getting the word out.
I prefer to think of healing as growth, like a tree.
I realized that what happened to me in my past has affected who I am and made me in part who I am.
It's been 25 years. I still go through pain and memories.
I didn't believe there could be any life other than suffering.
I went through stages of a lot of anger at God. I never really glommed on to the Christian beliefs because they were used against me.
There are many people in my life, if it wasn't for them, I'd be dead.
I'm married, a spouse, her name is Valerie.
I basically had I feel like divinely guided to a therapist who finally could actually understand, and she told me about survivorship. I joined the board of directors about 6 years ago. I was president of the board for about 4 years. I really felt like when I got well enough that it was an organization I really wanted to give back to.
We, as survivors, need to tell our stories, and we need to get it out into book form or into some form where we can distribute it.
I'm working on a book.
I hope that healing happens and that those people are in turn able to use their gifts and their talents.
Fox TV News got a hold of me and said, "Can we interview you about your book?"
I think that the world of ritual abuse, child prostitution, child pornography, there's a tremendous amount of money that goes through those worlds, and people in power that don't want the world to know. I think that people don't know how to believe that other human beings can be as evil. They would rather think we're crazy.
Who wants to hear it? You know, who wants to deal with it? So there's always going to be that struggle. You know, I was a lot more comfortable before you started talking about this.
My wife and I want to open up a ministry house where people could come and get intense ministry.
I hope there's a rage against the machine.
I want to break the silence and the isolation.
I hope it holds peace for me. We can enlighten the public.
My hopes for my future, to continue living a peaceful, joyful life. For the future of the survivor movement, I'm hoping that we have more connectivity.
The coolest thing just has to be The opportunity to see so many people heal. Say, if it weren't for survivorship, I wouldn't be alive. If it weren't for survivorship, I wouldn't be happy.
Survivorship is called that because that's what it is. It's sort of this ship that you can get on and know that you're sort of moving along to others, that there's this ship that can hold you until you know how to hold yourself.